Like Moses at the age of 40, Jesus at the age of 12 says, if there is a God, I want to see him. I want to touch him. I want to experience him. It's a force within him, Julian. You see, you don't need to travel, Julian, in search of truth or whatever it is you're questioning, because you can get that through books. You can come to class and ask these questions. But that wasn't his deal. He had something inside him. I'm not quite sure how people get it. You know, it's like Kobe Bryant. He used to say that he would wake up at 2 in the morning and go to the court and just practice basketball. Who does that? You know, do you make an SLO? In other words, do you create a certain guideline and give it to the kids? And will that guideline inspire these kids who enjoy sleeping and eating and having fun to get up at 2 in the morning and start playing hoops? Of course not. There is something that is driving Kobe Bryant, as there was something that was driving Jesus Christ. Jesus, not Christ just yet. So the first thing you need to understand is you're talking about a 12-year-old kid who has a good amount of magic inside him. I'm not quite sure where he gets it from. And don't believe anyone who'll tell you they know. They don't know. Jesus never wrote anything. Not a single thing. He was like Socrates. Why write? When you write something, someone is going to read it. And what's going to happen when you read something? You're going to interpret the thing that you read. And where is that interpretation going to come from? It's going to come from you, your history, your background. You're going to contaminate it. He says, no, I don't want my teachings to be contaminated. He didn't write anything. So you have a kid who doesn't enjoy ready-made answers. He doesn't accept answers from anyone. He's on fire, man. He says, the only person that I am willing to put this fire out is God himself. I want to find things for myself. That's an amazing kid you have on your hand. You know? And it would be very, very wrong for anyone to go on the stage and say, well, Jesus at the age of 12 was this way, so you should be that way. No. We don't know how this kid was that way. You can't manufacture him as you can manufacture Socrates, as you can manufacture Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. These people are freaks of nature. They just come about. For 18 long years, he goes here and there. Just go back to the stuff we were talking about on the board. There is a 12-year-old, he's familiar with his world. He knows his parents. He's been told what God is. He's been told what it means to do good, be right, what it means to be a human being. There comes a point where he says no. And so when he says no to his parents. He says no to his religion. He says no to his community. He basically is saying that out of the 2,000 people who live in Nazareth, there is not a single person who can answer my questions. I mean, talk about being lonely and depressed. That you have all these questions within you bubbling, and there is no one other to answer it. There are all these theories as to where he went on those 18 years. You know, some people say Egypt, Persia, India. Nobody knows, and it doesn't really matter. But he comes around the age 30. When he goes back to his town, he doesn't knock on his mom's door saying, "Mom, I'm back." No. He doesn't say, "Where's Dad?" No. He just goes directly to the synagogue and looks at people and says, you know, you've been told, or you've been waiting for a Messiah or a David-like figure to come your way. I'm here to tell you, I'm he. And what happens to him? Now, You have some guy who says he's got the truth, and you have the masses. You have 20 people. What happens when someone says, I have what you want? And they say no. Why? Because the moment you're dealing with people whose minds have been made up, there isn't much you can do. The only way you can change anyone is to break them. You should read the story of Malcolm X when he was in prison. He's in the shower, and you can also get the short version by watching the movie. You know, he dyes his hair, sometimes orange, sometimes yellow. While in school, he dyed it orange because they called him the orange poodle, and he liked it. Because white kids would give him attention, it would make him relevant, significant, his value would go up as a kid, as a black kid in America. And it had become an addiction for him, to change himself because he didn't like who he was and how he was created. So while dyeing his hair, someone goes to him and says, do you not like yourself? Do you hate yourself? And he doesn't like being asked those questions. And there comes a point where he's broken by this man. And when he's broken, he's ready to be broken. He doesn't challenge. I mean, he does initially, but eventually he says, okay, let me go check this out. He's broken, but he's receptive. He's not aggressive. He's not violent. He says, well, maybe I should go and look at what the word Negro means. So what you have at the very outset is that you have a kid who goes to the synagogue, well, not kid, he's 30 by this time, and says, let me tell you, and he reads from the book Isaiah, which basically is saying that, you guys have been waiting for a Messiah to come, I'm him. What are you dealing with? I had a student about 6 years ago. His father was a Klan member. He was a Klan member. He was the biggest opium dealer in Northern California. Eventually he got caught, was sent to San Quentin. He had killed 7 people, but because the guards didn't see it, they couldn't really do much to him. He had cancer of the throat, and after about, 18 years, he was released. He came to my class, and he was tattooed from head to toe. And all the tattoos were symbolic of, clan meaning, white brotherhood meaning. He still had attachment to that particular group. Initially, he would say, I don't want to get rid of any of them because they remind me of what a wicked human being I was, because I judged people merely on their skin color. And despite a lot of people telling him over the years to remove these tattoos, he said no, because the tattoos were a symbol for him that gave him identity, meaning. At a certain point in his life, someone walked into his life. It was a woman. He was at the right place. She asked him to remove the tattoos, and he said, okay. And this was 2 years before he passed. And the point I'm trying to make is this. Some of us in this class have a history. We are addicted to certain things. It may simply be a belief system, okay? As long as you are addicted, in other words, as long as that belief system gives you identity, meaning, relevance, it doesn't matter who walks into your life and who tells you that you need to change. You're never going to do it. Okay? The same thing happened 2,000 years ago. Okay? So they drove this 30-year-old man out. He doesn't invite people to God. He invites everybody to himself. Jesus, at the age of 30, having been Christos, or Christed, anointed by God, he says, if you want to get to Yahweh, all you got to do is just follow me. Look at me. feel what I feel, see the world through my eyes. That is what we call a living religion, a living tradition. See, but living and the dead, they create a good amount of conflict. And it's something that the 19th century novelist Fyodor Dostoevsky talked about, Russian novelist. I mean, what is Easter? Easter is when Jesus resurrects, right? That's why we celebrate it. Imagine it's Easter Sunday and there is a knock on your door and you've invited some people, they all happen to be Christians and you're a believer and you read all these books about Christianity and you open the door and there is this guy with long hair, beard, has a cane or a staff. And you say, yes, can I help you? Well, last night you said something about Jesus Christ. You want him in your life. I'm here. I came to pay you a visit. Say, you're not Jesus Christ. Some homeless guy from over there. No, I'm actually Jesus Christ. No, you're not. He says, wait a minute. Your name is so-and-so, isn't it? Yeah. But you could have easily gotten that by Googling my address. My name would appear. Well, your first husband was Jack. Your second husband was Luke. Yeah, but you could also Google those things. You also have A, B, C, D, and all of a sudden you realize he knows everything about your life. And he says, I am Jesus. I am the guy you're looking for. And since last night your prayers were so sincere, I'm here paying you a visit. You want to follow me? You say, yes, absolutely. Okay. I'll give you 5 minutes. Go pack a few things in your backpack and let's go. What do you mean? Well, let's go. Go where? What about my house, my kids? I have all these gets. Oh, well, you can't serve two masters. Let's go. What do you mean, let's go? Follow me. Say no. And what you realize is this, kind of like writing the essays. There are stuff that live in your head, and then there are the practical stuff. The practical stuff is always going to be difficult. If that's a little too abstract for some of you, think of it this way. For those of you who raise your hand when I asked how many of you smoke, I have no doubt there have been days where you sit, you light up, and then you catch yourself saying, yeah, I really need to quit. That's your Jesus Christ right there. You've been enlightened at that particular moment. What do you do with it? Well, the living force that says quit has to combat 12, 13, 14 years of addiction. What's going to happen? Well, the 13 years is very cunning. Yeah, I'll quit tomorrow. And what are you going to do? Very much like what happened 2,000 years ago. You're going to put Jesus on the cross, watch it slowly bleed, and then the insight, the intuition that came up and said, put it out, smoke, put the smoking out, just quit, go for a walk. It sounds good, it's just too difficult. And as long as you don't see it, it doesn't exist, which means that you can continue smoking. So there are two kinds of religion, Julian. You have the living tradition that lives inside someone like Jesus, Moses, Malcolm X, Mahatma Gandhi, Muhammad. And then you have the theories that live in books, live in the synagogues, live in churches, live in the classrooms. Okay? In the classrooms, all you do is hear. Once in a while you can think. Once in a while you can write. And that's where it ends. The reason why people like Malcolm or Jesus or Moses, Muhammad don't have very many followers is because the application of their teaching is tremendously difficult, nearly impossible. Now, the other thing you need to understand is this. The word religion means to bring out. I'm sorry, not to bring out, that's education. Education means to bring out. I mean, they're both the same, really. Religion means to go back. To go back to the roots. In Taoism, there is this wonderful component that you need to have if you want to be a good philosopher, a good religionist, a good human being. You need to be like a child. Now, there are two kinds of, childlikeness. You could either be like a 5-year-old. A 5-year-old is fun. They're stupid, but they're fun. They haven't had much experience in life. They don't really know how to think or talk or write. They don't know anything except to have fun. They're never still. They're always full of energy. You care for your TV. They have no attachment to it. They want to break it. Okay, so for them, it's very natural, instinctual. Then there is another kind of childlikeness that you've gone to be 50 or 60 or 70. You had a chance to evaluate your life and you come to realize, for the most part, you've taken life far too seriously. You've taken things that mean nothing far too seriously. I don't know if you know Chief Seattle. He's the Native American. And when soldiers would go into their lands and they would throw money in their faces, they would come to realize that these kids, Native American kids, would take these pieces of paper, i.e. money, they would take it home and play with them, make them into kites, into aeroplanes, make fire with them. And Chief Seattle would say, well, that's what money is for, to be burnt, to be made airplanes with, for kids. I don't know why white men put so much stock in money. In other words, when you're a 50-year-old and you've looked at life really, really well, you realize most of it is really quite nonsensical. It's quite absurd, ridiculous. And then you make fun of all the things that you used to take very seriously. You joke around. You become sarcastic. If that's a little too difficult for you to grasp, go back to the 18th century satirist, Jonathan Swift. He looks at all the promises of the Enlightenment age. Imagine I am a woman and you're a man, you're 20, I'm 18. And I tell you, oh, Julian, I love you. I'll make the best wife or best companion. I'll do this for you and I'll do that for you. I give you lots of promises. That's the birth of all relationships, filled with promises and hopes and dreams. What does time do to all promises? It wrinkles them, destroys them. After a while, you come to realize, no, I'm actually not a good wife. I'm actually quite crummy as a companion. And you're desperately looking for a way out. He makes fun of everything that human beings create. Jonathan Swift. Now that is being childlike. You understand life and you make fun of most of it because it is ridiculous. And that is the position of someone like Jesus. He makes everything ridiculous. So ABCD happens. He dies. They kill him. Before his death, he promises his disciples that he's going to come back. He doesn't show up for almost a century. And something interesting happens. Peter had denied him. You deny things because you don't really understand it. Because you're fearful of understanding and what it can do to you. About a century and a half later, all these churches begin to come up. But you have almost 35 different gospels. What are you going to do? You read the Gospel of Mark, there is no word about his virgin birth, not a single phrase. Then you have another book that says, oh yes, his mom was a virgin. In one book, he says, I'm simply a rabbi. In another book, he says, I'm a god. So what will he do with all these contradictions? Well, around the 4th century, a committee comes about to decide which books we should keep and which books we should get rid of. They choose 4. The living tradition, the religion that was Jesus Christ, now is housed, gets domesticated. You know what domestication means, right? You raise your hand, you want to ask a question, and you do ask it, but they say, no, it's wrong. Then next time your hand goes up, there's a good amount of fear inside you. And after 3 weeks, your hand never goes up. You've been domesticated. You think yourself to think really well. You raise your hand and you give me some commentary. I shut it down. I domesticate you. And so Christianity, this new organization, begins to domesticate the living tradition of Jesus. We call it the Catholic Church. For 1,000 years, it had power over everybody's life. Society, politics, kings, queens, everybody. Are you straight or gay? Julian, don't answer it. You're straight. You know why? God says so. That's the end of the story. Are you going to have sex before marriage, Julian? Don't answer it. God says no. It's end of story. Are you a good parent? Oh no, God no. You don't think about those things. You have children simply because God says so. Do you watch porn? No. God is always there, watching over you. Who are you? Oh, I'm Julian. My parents were Adam and Eve. They did something wrong long time ago. They were forced down here. I live in sin. You see, you have all the answers to life. For 1,000 years, if you asked anybody who they are, what they are, they just knew. There is no gray area, man. Life is black and white. It's great. I mean, every age has its own difficulties, but it is great, man. If you question this, if you doubt this, there's a place in San Francisco, it's a Persian restaurant. It's called Meykade. In Persian, it means tavern, where you go and drink some wine. Get in your car, just drive there. And ask people, can you tell me where Meykade is? Don't use your phone, no GPS, no MapQuest. Don't Google it. Just drive there. And tomorrow you should do this. Wake up at 6 and go find it. And I assure you, you will be overcome with frustration and eventually anger. And you will drive back home. On the way back, you'll stop by it, in and out, feed yourself and go home and sleep. Do you know how difficult it is to go through life without GPS? If you're wondering why 21st century people suffer from a good amount of confusion, depression, loneliness, there is no GPS to anything anymore. Now, the 1,000 years from the 3rd century to the 13th century is considered to be the Dark Ages. I'm not quite sure if it was all that dark. No depression. Sure, there was poverty. Science was crushed to some extent. Philosophy was crushed. But so what? You live for 40, 50 years and then you die. In the 40, 50 years, why just not live with a GPS? You get married at the age of 16. You have a few, kids. You provide for them. You get sick, they take care of you, and you die. And you've lived a relatively good life, then you go to paradise. That's the dream, at least. What do you have now? No religion, no parents. You have no respect for anything. By the time you get married, you've been with like 5,000 people. And God knows if you have any diseases inside you. You don't believe in anything. You have no anchor in anything. Nothing protects you, shelters you. Eventually your God becomes, or your priest becomes a therapist. And you're medicated. So for 1,000 years, that was the religion for people. It told them how to live life, who they are, what they are. If that is a little too difficult to grasp, because you assume that we're just talking about religion, it's not the case. Imagine for the past 20 years your parents look at you and assume that you're straight. That's their religion. My son or my daughter is straight. They're going to get married, and I'm going to be a grandfather or grandmother. I'm going to buy them a house next door, all that stuff. That's their religion, man. And one day you come out and you say, Mom, I'm gay. What do you think is going to happen to their 20 years of dreams and hopes? That's their religion. You've crushed them. What are you going to do? I'm sorry. I want to be who I am. It's my life. It's my right. So try to look at religion. Okay? Try to look at GPSs of life in all sorts of different ways. If you happen to be in a relationship, if you're married, and all of a sudden find yourself attracted to another human being, what you're saying is, this is your religion, 20 years of marriage, now you have found something new. What's going to happen to this old stuff? Okay? Julian, yes. Can become what? There are a couple of things. Have you heard of Venus, Aphrodite, Siduri, Sophia? These are all female or women versions of love. Go try falling in love with Aphrodite. Go read a lot of books. See her images as depicted in the pages and fall in love with that particular image. It won't be possible. But the way you can get to Aphrodite is this. You look at the person next to you, you spend some time with her, eventually you will grow to like her, spend some more time with her, then you will love her. And then you will come to love Aphrodite through loving Enyame, if she was open to you. You don't begin to love a philosophy, or you don't begin to love religion. You begin to love the philosopher. And through the philosopher, you will slowly walk towards philosophy. You're not going to love Christianity. You're going to love a pastor at first, if they happen to be animated, inspiring, and through him or her, then you will find yourself to Jesus Christ, if you want to go that way. Yeah.
Well, so your church, now, say, okay, you're growing up, then Christ will take you. Their church, whatever, say Catholicism, okay? And when you're 10 years old, 11 years old, you're having these thoughts about Catholicism. Then your family's all Catholic, and you said, hey, I want to go be a Protestant, go to baptistry. And that's a different dynamic right there. I mean,
Yeah.
Then you're just, I'm all of a sudden thinking these things. I bring those to church, check it out, and I want to be a Baptist. I want to start going to Baptist. That means I have to leave the thing. I have to leave my family. Now there's like might be conflict with it.
Well, let me kind of, I know some of you are lost, some of you are bored, some of you are asleep. But let me kind of respond to your comment in this way. And I'm going to borrow the story from one of my good friends who died about 800 years ago. His name is Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi Balkhi. He was a Persian poet. There were 4 people who were hungry. Okay? One speaks French, one speaks English, one speaks German, and one speaks Arabic. They put their monies together, and the English says, I want grapes. That'll feed me well. The Arab will say, I want anab. That'll feed me well. The French says whatever, and the German says whatever. But what they hear is so different. I mean, grapes and anab, what the hell is that? So they begin to fight amongst each other. All of a sudden, Kevin just passes this group of people and says, what are you guys fighting about? What they don't know about Kevin is that he speaks French, German, Arabic, and English. And what he comes to realize is that they're all saying grape in a different language. And so Kevin looks at them and says, can you guys just give me your money? I'll be right back. He takes their money, goes to Trader Joe's, and buys them a boatload of grapes and comes back. And all of a sudden they all sit and begin to eat. Nobody fights. The reason for the conflict, whatever the conflict may be, in a relationship, whether it's politics, social, none of us exactly know what it is that we want, but what all of us are sure is that we don't want to be in a class that's boring. We don't want to be in a class that's not relevant to our life. Okay? So she says, I love this class. It brings me to life. He says, this class just kills me. She says to him, well, just ask a question that'll bring you to life. Why do you want to fight? Just go home, sit for 10 minutes, figure out what questions are good for you. And all of a sudden, the conflict goes away. Yeah, anyways. Before I continue, do you have any other questions or comments? No one? Okay, now let me just add a little bit more poison. Do you know why you're so important, Julian? Because for 1,000 years, perhaps more, you've been told that God creates everything, but the only thing He breathes His Spirit into is you, the human being. And He creates earth for one simple reason, because of you. And He allows you to have dominion over everything. You have power over everything because you're so unique and special and powerful. Galileo comes about, and you know what Galileo does? He's a scientist. He has this telescope. He looks out and he says, Earth is like this speck of dust in the middle of nowhere. How could something so important look so insignificant? There are all these other things around. Now, because it was believed that Earth, because of human beings, are so important, the sun revolves around the Earth. It's an act of worship. The entire cosmos worships us. Galileo comes about and says, no, it's actually the other way around. What's that going to do to you, to your ego, to your belief system? If that's a little too difficult to grasp, think of it this way. If you have a companion, go out and make sure you take it to a place where lots of attractive people come and go. And as you guys are sitting, sit back and observe how much of her attention is going towards this person or that person. As she looks at Joe and Jack and Schmo and Mo, you become less and less and less relevant. What's going to happen to you? More and more invisible. Then you're going to ask questions. Does she love me? Does she not love me? Is she here for my money, my looks? What is she here for? She's not paying me any attention. Then as you're driving home, what are you going to do? You're going to pick a fight. Maybe even you'll break up. How do you silence Galileo? You crush his ideas. You put him under house arrest. Next time any of you in this class go to a therapist's office, why do you go? Oh, it's my emotions. My emotions is my life. My life, very important. So the first crack in religion for 1,000 years came because of science, because of Galileo. Now, it may not seem very significant, but you need to understand, imagine this dam. It's been holding this water for 1,000 years. There's a crack, and little water is leaking out. If more cracks appear, the whole thing is going to bust. Yeah.
But when you do that, well, the church into the court, Catholic court,
I understand that, but we're only talking about Galileo and the crack. And there are more cracks to appear. Next is Martin Luther. And he was the first guy who really picked a fight with the Catholic Church. He didn't want to, but it just happened. And for the first time, what you have is the power of the Catholic Church being examined, being challenged. And the Catholic Church can't do it. So now you have two Christianities, the Catholics and the Protestants. And the point I'm trying to make, as damages keep happening, you get all the way to the 19th century, 18th century, the Industrial Revolution. You know, the emergence of this new model of capitalism and society, you don't have to wait to be happy until after death. You can be happy right now, Julian. If you live in a tiny little village, save some money, get on a plane, go to San Francisco or New York. They will sell you happiness. They will sell you ideas about life, about beauty. I didn't watch it, but apparently Beyonce won a few Grammys last night. Yeah. Society just sold you the definition of being a successful musician. Kim Kardashian sells you the idea of beauty. See, for almost 1,700 years, if you wanted to know what it means to be happy or successful, you just read the Bible. Now, you just watch YouTube. Now, with the Industrial Revolution, something interesting happens. If your thoughts, ideas, and if your emotions were upwards, in other words, if they had religious components to them, now most of your emotions have become secular. You would complain because God has made your life this way. Now you complain about your father. First you would say, my life is this way because of God. Now you say, it's Donald Trump. If you would take your complaints to the church, now you take them to the therapist office. The assumption that all of us in the 21st century have is life somehow is fixable. For almost 1,800 years, all of us knew that life just sucks, man. It's blood and sweat. And happiness only when you die. Contentment only when you die. Satisfaction only when you die. You don't marry because you want to be happy. It's just what you do. You don't have kids because you find yourself to be a great father or a parent. It's just what you do. Today, you want to do everything in a single lifetime. The best companion, the best job, the best marriage, the best car. You want to be everything. You want to be like a Costco. And what's waiting for you ultimately is failure. But it took about 700 years for the West to get to 21st century. I think in the second movie, Wall Street, with Michael Douglas, after he having served like 5, 10 years of a prison sentence, he comes to this group of people and tells them, you guys, this new generation, you got no parents, you got no savings, you have nothing. It's a generation of complete bankruptcy. You will end up nowhere. And that's this culture. Add to it the most basic things that we believed in is now under challenge. We have no clear definition of what it means to be a man or a woman. We have no clear definition of what it means to be successful or happy. Nothing is clear anymore.